Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media Summit. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you all. Now let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console, and we're going to start with the questions window. If you haven't already said hi, there is a whole giant awesome community of people out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also keep in mind, if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is probably going to fix just about anything, but if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the questions section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you, so throughout today's summit, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up, there are going to be lots of cool aha brain light up moments on the summit today. And if you want to share those with your community, we love that. We've made it nice and easy. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's summit will automatically be added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go and explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes that we'll be giving away throughout the summit today. Now, I will tell you a little bit more about those later on. They have a few quick reminders for you all. First, you do need to be in attendance during the live webinar in order to qualify to win, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the summit today. Now, all of our winners must submit an IRS Form W9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, you can find the full T's and C's in that handouts tab. Again, just click on the handouts tab, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find them there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember is that we love getting all of your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much, we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's summit, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our live sessions. The expert speakers and teams will be reviewing all the questions asked after the webinar, which means even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. And if you are a lucky winner here today and you'd like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about your big win, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have all of you here live with us at the summit today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social media. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter, LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. And if you're looking for more awesome resources and content right after we wrap the summit today, make sure you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you'll find a link to do that right in that handouts tab, and you will be automatically redirected at the end of the webinar as well. Both you and your coworker could win a prize, and we hold those drawings every month. So be sure to refer a friend, because it could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for all the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link back in that handouts tab and fill out the application. The Actual Tech crew will then match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys, test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, chat with great people, and learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply or send the link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you all about one of my all-time favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find out everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, prevent, and recover. This site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need all in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. Go check it out and start exploring. Okay, I have one more exciting resource that I have to tell you all about today. That is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. This is going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books will work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and again, completely free. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we have covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited and ready to dive in, so let's get going. All right. Well, kicking us off today, I want to start by saying welcome and thank you for joining us at Actual Tech Media's Enterprise IT Virtual Summit. Now, today's topic is Discovery Day, products and services that support cloud migration, security, sustainability, and success. And I, of course, need to start out our summit by saying a giant thank you to all of you for joining us here today. Whether it's, I saw some rainy days out there, you gotta love the spring summits, or you're hiding from lawn mowing, like some of our friends have already said. Whatever it is that brought you here today, I hope that you're here with a bright, open mind, ready to spend some time learning, exploring, discovering, because today we are going to dig into cloud migration. We're going to talk about security, sustainability, and best of all, that key point, we are going to talk about success. And to help us out with all of this wonderful discovery, we have some of the most innovative, industry-leading companies all gathered together in one place for one powerhouse, jam-packed, all-around awesome day. Today, you are going to be hearing from experts at TierPoint, KnowBe4, Zerto, Pure Storage, and Rubrik. Like I said, an absolutely jam-packed day. Each one of those sessions is going to be full of innovative solutions. You're going to get some of those hot trends. You're going to get those creative strategies. We have a lot of excitement in the wings. I think we should probably get things rolling pretty quickly here because we got a lot to do. But I'm going to jump through just a few housekeeping points to get us on our way and help you get the most out of your time here with us at the summit. All right, so we are going to start with a quick stop at Prizeland because, of course, this is a very important part of the summit. Are the prizes, are the exciting opportunities to win. So today you could win one of 2 Apple AirPods. You could also win one of 2 brand new 15-inch M2 MacBook Airs and one of 2 Nintendo Switch consoles. Plus, we have that $300 Amazon gift card that we will be giving away every 30 minutes, and that is not even including the $50 Best Question gift card from each one of our sessions. So that's a whole bunch of extra chances to win. And we are going to be looking at all the questions asked after we wrap. So even if we don't get to you in a live Q&A session today, you're still entered to win. So keep those questions coming in. All right, that is a whole lot of great prizes. And in the crescendo of awesomeness as we go, prizes through to moderators again, right? That I think that was the right order of excitement. My name is Jess Steinbach. If I haven't met you before, I am one of the moderators here at Actual Tech Media, and I am very happy to introduce this incredible cast of characters. We have Scott Becker, Keith Ward, and Mackenzie Puddesy here with us on live chat today, so you will get to chat with all of us. All right, well, with that, I think it's time to kick off our summit and get into our keynote speaker, which, as you can all see, we are starting out with a familiar face, definitely kicking things off on a high note. We get to chat with the one and only Ned Bellavance, Ned in the Cloud, Microsoft Azure MVP and author. All right, well, Ned, I know you're going to talk to us about the era of cloud. Very excited to get into this and kick off our summit here, so I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Ned.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining today. My name is Ned Bellavance, and today I thought we could have a think about the cloud era and what it means to embrace and migrate cloud applications. Before we talk about the current state of cloud and where we are in the cloud era, I think we have to have a look at where we came from. Why cloud? What does it mean to use the cloud? What were the early promises, and where are we today? I'll start with the core premise of public cloud. Cloud is the easy button for businesses. To illustrate what I mean by that, I'd like to use an analogy to food. Let's think about what's involved when you're cooking a meal at home. Well, you have to go to the grocery store and shop for the food. You need to stock your kitchen with the proper tools to make a meal. You need to find recipes or make up your own based on prior knowledge. Then you need to execute on preparing the food and cooking it. And once you've made the food, you get to eat it, which is awesome, but then you have to clean everything up. Making your own meals at home is a lot of work. Or you can open the DoorDash app and have food delivered to your door in about 15 minutes. If you want to do computing on premises, you need to work with a vendor to procure all the hardware. You have to hire the right people who know how to build and run a data center. You need to design or use existing architecture and guidance to build out the infrastructure that runs your apps. And then you actually need to set it all up and keep it running. Running your own infrastructure is a lot of work. Or you can open up the AWS console and have compute delivered in, well, a lot less than 15 minutes. Seriously, I can have like 1,000 EC2 instances spun up in 15 minutes. How quickly can you do that in your data center? So if ordering out is so easy, why do you even cook your own meals? I have a few reasons. It could be that you just enjoy the process of cooking. I know I do. I like trying out new recipes, doing the preparation, and the satisfaction that comes from watching others enjoy something I made. When the cloud rocked up to the scene in the 2010s, ops people like me kind of freaked out a little because we thought we weren't going to be able to do that fun stuff anymore in the data center. Another reason is cooking your own food gives you a greater degree of control. You decide how much salt to add to a sauce, how thick to cut the bacon, and the order in which to assemble the final plate. You get to pick the exact ingredients, tools, and techniques that are used to prepare a meal. When I roll out an application in my data center, I get to decide which hardware, what operating systems, what type of storage, how often I want to patch that application, and how the entire environment is secured and managed. I maintain that level of control. And also, cooking at home is more economical than eating out or having your food delivered, at least in isolation. Despite the early promises of the public cloud providers, most steady state workloads are actually cheaper to run on-prem. All of that is true. And yet, restaurant and food delivery services continue to persist. That's because food prep doesn't happen in a vacuum, and neither does running a data center. When I choose to make my own meals, I'm also choosing not to do something else. There's an opportunity cost involved. If it takes me 2 hours a day to prepare my food, that's 2 hours that I'm not doing something else. Making your own food and hosting your own infrastructure is a cost-benefit analysis. Remember, what businesses actually care about is making more money or reducing costs. They care about innovating and providing customer value. They do not care if we cooked a world-class 7-course meal in our kitchen or just ordered it from Uber Eats. The big question is, does my company gain a distinct economic advantage by hosting its own infrastructure and managing its own applications? The absolute explosion of software as a service and cloud computing kind of gives us the answer. The argument for cloud is not that it's cheaper, it's that it's easy. And for the majority of your on-prem workloads, there's no economic benefit to hosting them, and there's an opportunity cost for your IT staff. Now, it sounds like cloud should be the end-all and be-all, doesn't it? Why not move everything to the cloud? Public cloud providers would like that. Because sometimes it actually does make more sense to eat in instead of ordering out. My world-famous grilled cheese, that's not something I can just get from Postmates. It's my recipe and my execution that makes the difference. Companies have a version of their own world-famous grilled cheese, and the applications that support that ooey gooey crunchy delight, those need to stay firmly on-prem or at least under management of the organization. Control is important. Cloud computing and SaaS are really good at taking on undifferentiated heavy lifting, by which I mean activities and services that are common across industries and do not provide economic value to manage them yourself. For existing applications that do provide differentiation, they're going to stay in the data center. But what about net new applications? It's not like companies and developers have stood still since 2014. The early appeal of cloud computing was the simplicity of provisioning, seemingly infinite scale, and the outsourcing of management and admin of the infrastructure. Along the way, cloud introduced some new services that weren't available on prem: functions as a service, AI and ML platform services, and even object based storage. And we had the simultaneous development of container technology, which became the de facto way to deploy applications in the cloud. Developers took these new application development paradigms and ran with them. However, that meant that the cloud native apps could no longer run in your on prem data centers. You didn't have stuff like Lambda, S3, or EKS running locally. Applications that were born in the cloud, they could never come home again. The other big thing that cloud introduced was the idea of everything having an API endpoint. That was great for developers, but it was also great for operations teams. It was now possible to automate workflows with real programmatic access. You weren't doing weird terminal scraping or writing awful bash scripts or trying to automate a UI interaction. Instead, you could send requests to an API endpoint and know that you were getting back structured data as defined by the API docs, at least most of the time. So while cloud started as the easy button for app devs and non-IT folks, it has two important side effects. Number one, new cloud native services that do not exist on-prem, at least not right now. Number two, consistent API endpoints for cloud services. Cloud native apps allow developers to iterate and innovate faster, which is good for the business's bottom line. APIs enabled automation, shortening the lead time for infrastructure deployment and maintaining consistency across environments. Hate to use the phrase digital transformation, but basically that's what we're talking about. That's where we are today. But what about tomorrow? What if it makes more economic sense to move cloud native applications to another provider or down to the on-prem data center? Have we locked ourselves into a public cloud future from which there's no escape? Not at all. What it requires of the IT team is to roll out similar services to the on-prem data center. And that can take a variety of formats. I've seen them all. Some folks try to bake it all themselves with COTS hardware and open source software, to varying degrees of success. Other organizations have been using cloud-like solutions from a variety of traditional vendors. Think VMware, Red Hat, and HPE. They'll all gladly sell you an on-prem cloud solution. Then there's solutions from the public cloud providers themselves: Azure Stack, AWS Outposts, and Google Anthos. They're all selling some combination of hardware and managed services to give you a cloud-like experience in your data center. The goal behind each solution is to bring down components of the cloud operational experience to your on-prem data center. Early on in the cloud era, all the messaging was around ease of use, reduced CapEx, and reduced admin overhead. There were promises that you could close your data centers, reduce your IT staff, and embrace pay-as-you-go. The thing is, in case you haven't noticed, a lot of those promises didn't come true. And that's okay. The real benefits of cloud were not in the initial pitch. They were what happened after early adoption. Cloud-native apps, API-based automation, infrastructure as code, and net new services. Those were the real benefits of cloud. And we only realize this when we look back in retrospect. Ultimately, cloud isn't a place, it's a process. It's not a where, it's a how. Cloud is not a noun, it's a verb. At least those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Hit me up on LinkedIn or at my website, nedinthecloud.com. Thanks, everyone, and enjoy the rest of today's event.
Oh man, I love that takeaway. I love that cloud is a process, not a place. It's a verb. I'm really resonating with that right now, Ned. I love that. I also feel like I need a grilled cheese sandwich. So I hope that you're sharing your world famous recipe with all of us after we wrap. Well, thank you so much, as always, to Ned. What a great way to kick off this summit. Now we have a quick question for all of you before we jump into our very first session of the day. Here's what we're wondering. What's your time frame? What's your time frame for adding new or updating your existing IT solution? So today we're talking about getting to that success point. We're talking about really optimizing and improving and enhancing and all those cool things. So if you're at your midway point in the year, I know, how did that happen? And you're thinking about maybe what you might want to implement between now and the end of the year, which we haven't even gotten to summer, and I'm already fast forwarding you to December. I know. But if you're thinking about that, then you are going to need to start putting some timelines to that. Are you thinking that you need to make these changes in the next 6 months? Or are you thinking ahead? Are you already in 2025? Are you futurizing, future fast forwarding into that 2025 year? Wherever you're at for time frame, just let us know. Again, this helps us kind of hit you with the right information at the right time. So we're just curious about where you're at in that journey. I'm seeing quite a few of you in that kind of phase of not really sure, although lots of you making changes in the next little bit in the I'd say 0 to 12 months time frame seems to be about the biggest. Well, I'm also seeing some interest in the world-class grilled cheese sandwich. So hopefully, Ned, that comes our way. All right, well, we are going to keep things moving right along because we have a lot to cover in this summit, a lot of sessions to get into. And as you can see, we are kicking things off with a bang. We are going to be chatting with the TierPoint crew. I am very excited to introduce you all to our very first presenter here with us on the summit, and that is Dimitri DeVos, VP Solutions Engineering and Architecture at TierPoint. Now, Dimitri, you are starting out our summit. I know you've got a lot of great stuff in store for us. So I'm going to step back. I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away.
Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Adapting to Change, Strategies for Choosing the Right Cloud and Adapting to Industry Shifts. I'm Dimitri DeVos, Vice President of Solutions Architecture. I've been in the business for over 20 years, and I'll be your host today. Before we get into it, let's take a moment to look at what we have in store for you today. First up, I will be defining the cloud options we will be discussing today. And I want to take a few moments to discuss the recently announced changes to the VMware license model and how that might impact your cloud strategy. And finally, I will share an overview of the approach TierPoint takes when we work with our customers considering or struggling with their cloud strategy. So now, let's get into it. For the context of this discussion, when it comes to cloud options, I'm focusing on these three types of platforms. With public cloud, typically we are focused primarily on Azure and AWS. Google is another option to consider. However, their platform has had less adoption and tends to serve a more specific need and niche. Now, there are many obvious benefits to a public cloud deployment, especially with new and greenfield applications. Though when considering legacy applications, these platforms can also be more efficient. However, most often you will need to determine what modifications or refactoring may be needed to gain the benefits folks are seeking in the cloud. I'll get into that a little bit later in this discussion. The second, and arguably easier transition for companies looking to move to a cloud, is a hosted private cloud. These are typically VMware based, though I have worked with OpenStack private clouds and a few other more esoteric platforms. Private clouds have been a preference for customers whose workloads have a predictable, steady state performance requirement. These types of workloads tend to be more cost effective in a public cloud than those applications that have been optimized to take advantage of the elastic benefits public clouds have to offer. And finally, the third option is a hybrid or multi-cloud approach that can take advantage of both public and private clouds. One of the first mistakes many companies make when embarking on a cloud strategy is assuming it's an all or nothing approach for your entire environment. The fact is, though, your workloads and applications probably have different requirements, different dependencies, and different maturity levels. The hybrid model allows you to find a strategy that is best for each specific workload and application. This is the first point you should really understand and take away. When you are developing your cloud strategy, each application and workload have different characteristics that may preclude one type of cloud platform or provider over the other. A hybrid model, while it sounds more complicated, with planning, it can be more efficient and beneficial for your business. Discuss what most are calling the elephant in the room. What is going on with VMware these days? Well, if you haven't been keeping up with the news, VMware announced big changes to their licensing models recently. They have eliminated the perpetual license model and are now requiring all customers to move to a subscription model. Going forward, many VMware products will not be available as standalone items as well. Like Oracle changed their license model a few years back, this model is based on the total number of physical cores in the environment. They also now require all cores, regardless if the servers are in standby mode for DR or not, to be licensed. In the past, DR nodes with no active workloads did not need to be licensed. They also collapsed their portfolio down to two main options. The first is the VMware Cloud Foundation, or VCF. This is targeted for the enterprise customers looking to take advantage of their more advanced features like vSAN, NSX, and ARIA, formerly known as vRealize. The second lower tier option is VMware vSphere Foundation, or VFF. This is targeted for smaller deployments that may not need all the features that come with VCF. Now, both of these offerings will have optional add-on services such as VMware NSX Firewall, NSX Advanced Threat Analyzer, NSX Advanced Load Balancer, just to name a few. Which are available may differ between VCF and VF. In other words, in order to purchase certain add-ons, you may need to have the VCF package over the less expansive VFF package. And the final and critical point you should be aware of are the changes to their support model. Any business who currently have perpetual licenses needs to understand these changes that are immediate to their support. All license models now require an active support agreement to receive updates and enhancements. Going forward, any customer without an active support agreement will only be able to receive zero-day security updates and have no access to their support services. I strongly recommend that you confirm your support agreements are in good standing. If your support agreements are not in good standing, you will likely be required to upgrade to a VVF or VCF subscription, even to be able to purchase support. Now, there are many benefits to the new model, however, these changes have accelerated some companies' plans to consider alternate cloud strategies. We've been working with several customers on this front and found that most have had a modest, if not significant, expense increase as a result of these changes. If you've recently purchased new licenses and renewed your support, then you probably have some runway. Those who haven't, and those with support renewals coming up sooner rather than later, have less time to evaluate these options. If you haven't been talking to your VAR and your VMware contacts, I urge you to do so. I also suggest getting a second opinion because there appears to be a lot of misinformation and bad assumptions out there. VMware has relaunched their cloud service provider partner program and have created 3 tiers of partners: Principal, Advanced, and Pinnacle partners. Now, the different levels of these partners receive different benefits and discount levels. Those in the Pinnacle level are considered the top tier and receive the best benefits and discounts that they can pass on to their customers. They also have drastically reduced the number of partners in their program, moving from over 4,500 to only a few hundred worldwide. Many smaller cloud partners were not brought into the program and are now scrambling to figure out how to best move forward. So when working with a VMware cloud service provider like TierPoint, we will provide and manage all the licensing and support you need for your environment. As a customer of a VMware CSP, you will automatically receive access to the VCF packages and the benefits that come with that. And I am proud to say that TierPoint is one of roughly 12 or so US-based companies that was invited and accepted into the Pinnacle program. Now, back to looking at your cloud strategies. There should be no confusion. This is a long and winding journey, and there's no other way around it. But there are ways to make the journey easier and faster. The first step for any company is to take a moment and consider the strategic impact a cloud adoption will have on your company. What exactly are the business goals you are hoping to achieve, and how will cloud bring value to your business? Many IT leaders look at this from the lens of modern technology, a faster deployment, and easier support. On the other hand, CFOs and CIOs are focused on the financial aspects, including moving from a CapEx cost model to an OpEx consumption model. In both cases, this can be a good starting point. However, a good cloud adoption strategy should bring value to all parts of your company. Will a cloud model bring more stability, increase security, and there improve brand image and revenue? Will it enable more features and functionality for your end users, increasing their productivity? These are the first steps you should consider as you embark on this cloud journey. And once you've defined these business goals and objectives, the technical and operational and financial goals are conducted with this in mind. And this is where we are able to help you. Our approach, and yours, is to make sure that you've got pathways for the individual applications that you use to run your business. And since every cloud journey is different, because every customer's environment is different, and every workload is different, we help customers define their cloud strategy at an application stack or workload level as it relates to your overall business. That may mean working to pursue a more native kind of solution, such as a VMware private cloud, or something that is a complete replacement using public cloud platforms or even SaaS offerings. Or maybe there's an urgency to move platforms because of aging hardware or unforeseen cost increases. A lift and shift into the new cloud form, while it may not be the most ideal solution, it will buy you some time, allowing you to refactor and re-architect any application after the fact. This way you can take advantage of the cloud benefits then. We will help companies on an individual basis by understanding their business goals, their technical and operational requirements, and then I'm applying them to the individual workload requirements. If you engage a partner like TierPoint, and I urge you to do so, but even if you do not, the cloud adoption process should be a phased approach. With TierPoint, our agnostic approach is to leverage various vendors' preferred models for readiness, mobilization, and migration. The first step is a readiness assessment, where we would run non-invasive automated tools in your environment to inventory and determine the various workload characteristics, including horsepower and inter-application dependencies. Then we validate these findings with your team to verify the results and identify any inconsistencies. Once we have completed these two steps, we're able to provide a relatively accurate pricing estimate for any immediate refactoring and migration costs. We are also able to give you estimates on steady state run costs with various cloud options. Step 2, the next step, is to perform the migrations, which includes building the landing zones and migrating customers over in a phased approach with minimal downtime and achieve a stable, steady state. The third and fourth steps, and here's an important and often overlooked truth about any cloud adoption strategy. Unlike the illustration I shared a few slides back, a cloud adoption approach is not really about reaching the destination, rather, it's the ongoing journey. As you first move into the cloud, best practices suggest a migration approach with minimal changes to ensure stability and achieve steady state. Once in the cloud, you can begin to drive the transformation process to increase your efficiency and resiliency and bring down your costs. At a high level, this begins by implementing an ongoing cost optimization practice. Think of this as FinOps as a service. We can also help further the well-architected framework best practice, add additional security features, increase resiliency through containerization and elastic compute models. When approached in a calculated manner with clear business goals in mind and a competent partner like TierPoint, your company and your team reaps the benefits most are looking for while avoiding the pitfalls and the tragic stories of cost overruns, missed deadlines, and project delays. So a little bit about TierPoint before I wrap up. TierPoint is one of the leading hybrid IT service providers in the United States. In fact, we've been around for well over 20 years, and we are one of the largest privately held IT service providers in the US. We have over 41 data centers and over 800 IT professionals on staff today and have thousands of customers. And take an agnostic approach with our cloud services. We can layer on various managed services, security services, and disaster recovery services onto any customer's cloud offering. We also underpin this with a deep bench of professional services and consulting practitioners that can do cloud assessments as well as security assessments and BCDR assessments. Thank you all so much for joining me today. While this presentation is high level, I hope you found it to be informative. Obviously, there's much more to the process we employ. In return for your time, I'd like to offer you a free cloud assessment workshop where my team and I can provide you a complimentary review of your cloud strategy, a high-level review of your environment, along with budgetary pricing and a migration plan. If you have further questions or you would like to talk to someone about this workshop or any of our assessments and tools in more detail, please reach out to us using the contact information displayed on the screen. We look forward to helping you maximize the value of your cloud environment and achieve greater success in your cloud journey.
Well, thank you so much, Dimitri. What a wonderful presentation and a great way to start out our summit. Lots of cool takeaways there. And I do want to point out that that cloud strategy workshop, the complimentary expert guidance that Dimitri was just chatting about, is available in your handouts tab. So you can get that expert guidance, right, that we're all here for. You can unlock that potential of your business's cloud journey. This is a really wonderful takeaway, a wonderful follow-up to the conversation we just had with Dimitri, worth downloading. So make sure you open the tab, make sure you download that now, hold on to that. Don't start reading it just yet because we've got lots more sessions to get into and lots more information, but make sure you hold on to that and you can spend some time with it once we've finished our summit here today. Now, I must say there's an absolutely raging debate about the best style of grilled sandwich and whether or not we should be dipping our grilled cheese sandwiches into soups. I've seen tomato basil. I've seen broccoli. Bill is wondering, are we putting bacon on this? I am now clearly starving and also needing to make 100 different kinds of grilled sandwiches and soups to go with them after we wrap. So I feel like eventually we'll have to do a cloud migration or cloud success security strategy and grilled cheese sandwich workshop. So you all start thinking about what sandwich you would pair with which solution as we go through this session here today. That's my challenge to all of you out there. All right, well, while you're thinking about sandwiches, while you're downloading that wonderful handout, and while you are deciding which soup you would pair with your handout and sandwich after we wrap, I also want to remind you all to click on the wish list that you see up on the screen. This is your shopping list. So do you want a data sheet? Do you want a technical white paper? Would a case study be more helpful? Whatever is going to be best for you in terms of following up on the wonderful session and conversation that we just had with Dimitri, click on the screen right now, and TierPoint will get you the answer that you're looking for. Now, another reminder, I know that there's a lot of questions coming in that we are not going to stop and take just yet, but we've got the TierPoint team here answering questions on live chat, and we are going to make sure that all of your questions get answered in follow-up. So any questions that we don't get to during our live session, you will get a response back over email. Plus, you are also entered to win that best question gift card. So keep those questions coming in. Make sure you get all your questions in for TierPoint, because not only will you get an answer back, but you're entered to win that $50 best question gift card. All right, my friends. Now with that, it is time for me to give away a prize. And no, it is not a grilled cheese sandwich, although, oh, with jalapeno slices. Okay, Alan, I like it. Gary says McGriddles. Yes, interesting. Okay. Well, while you're all debating that, I'm going to give away a prize that has no cheese in it and is 0% grilled. And that is, of course, a $300 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present with us at the summit. And that lucky winner is Christopher Timms from Michigan. Christopher Timms from Michigan, congratulations on your $300 Amazon gift card. Now let's give away a pair of AirPods. And these AirPods are going to John Polanski of California. John Polanski of California. Congratulations to you, my friends. Now we will follow up with both of you after we wrap, and there are still lots more chances to win. So stay tuned for that. And we will keep the winners and the grilled cheese sandwiches a-rolling here. And speaking of rolling, it is time to get into our very next session. And now, really, this presenter needs no introduction, because I know that you are all immediately excited to be hearing from the one and only Roger A. Grimes, data-driven defense evangelist at KnowBe4. Roger, your presentations are absolutely chock full of information. I know that today we will be in for a treat as always. So Roger, I'm going to step back. I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, my friends.
Thanks everyone for showing up for my top cloud security hacks and how you can avoid them. I'm going to be talking a lot about cloud security and really how it impacts you. And just know that this talk used to be about an hour long, and I'm fitting most of that content into the next 24 minutes. So I'm going to be talking fast, but if you've heard me speak before, I always talk fast, but I'm going to be speaking a little bit faster than ever before. If you haven't met me before, my name is Roger Grimes. I've been doing computer security for like 35 years, and I've written 14 books. There's some of my books, and over 1,300 magazine articles, a lot of them on cloud security. I work for KnowBe4. We're the world's largest security awareness, training, and simulated phishing platform vendor, and I love it. I've been with KnowBe4 going on 6 years, and it's been my favorite company ever. But today we're going to be talking about cloud security, specifically about the Cloud Security Alliance, top 11 threats. We'll talk about that briefly. And then I'm going to tell you a better way to think about cloud security threats, because really it's the way that you should be thinking about all cybersecurity threats, including cloud threats. And then we're going to talk about the top 5, or somewhere around the top 5 cloud security threats that you should be worried about and how you defend yourselves against those. So to start with, again, probably the world's #1 cloud security organization is the Cloud Security Alliance. I've belonged to it for many, many years, and I've been on a working group for many years. It's a really great, awesome organization. And if you're worried about cloud security, or if you want to get cloud security certified or whatever, you should check them out. And there's a lot of different chapters around the world. Every year they release a report on cloud security. They kind of have some cool names. This year, the last time they released a report recently, they called it the Pandemic 12 Deep Dive Report. I think the previous year it was the Treacherous 12 or something like that. But it's kind of the definitive go-to report for looking at cloud security threats. These are the top 11 threats that the Cloud Security Alliance identified. And if you have to secure your cloud security products or systems, you should definitely pay attention to this. And my top 5 that I'm going to cover come out of this list. But this is a great list, and you should familiarize yourself with this list. With that said, and I love this report, but it's really just a survey of different cloud service providers, and it doesn't really have actual data. It doesn't tell you exactly which ones are the worst ones to worry about and which ones not. And it doesn't have all types of threats in it, like it doesn't include denial of service attacks, which have been pretty big especially for the last couple of years. It's a bit vendor driven at times, so they're the ones being surveyed. And again, my biggest probably pet peeve is that there's no risk relevance, like how much you should pay attention to number 1 versus number 11. It's not backed by hard data, but I'm going to show you some relevance of my top 5 as backed by hard data. And it's a hodgepodge mix of threats and causes of threats, and we're going to talk about that. That it's really common that cybersecurity reports mix up root causes of security attacks and then outcomes of security attacks. Like, if someone steals your password, that isn't necessarily a root cause of an attack. It's how they stole your password that would be the root cause of the attack. In many reports, most cybersecurity reports kind of mix that up. It's a small caveat that I have in there, and I'll talk more about that. But we'll certainly think about like data exfiltration. As another example, is an outcome of an attack. It's not an attack type. Someone didn't attack you with data exfiltration. They attacked you with social engineering, unpatched software misconfiguration, or something like that, and then were able to exfiltrate your data. But it's still, the Cloud Security Alliance reports should be read by anybody that's involved in cloud security or trying to protect their company, because it's one of the best reports out there. Really do love it. But I'm going to give you a better way of thinking about cloud security threats. And again, as I kind of just covered, is you need to focus on root causes of how hackers and their malware break into your company. We call them root cause attacks or something like that. Like some people, they're worried about ransomware. Oh my God, ransomware can attack me. Well, ransomware, as another example, is an outcome of how someone broke into you. You need to be worried about the root causes of how ransomware could break into you. Is it social engineering? Is it unpatched software? Is it misconfiguration? Is it eavesdropping? Ransomware is an outcome of a particular attack. And if you want to stop ransomware, you have to stop the root cause of that attack. Worrying about ransomware is like worrying about your brakes after your car has been stolen. You can do it, but it's not going to get you there. Here are the 13 root cause attack methods that I have been watching, learning over the last 35 years. Every single attack that I've ever read about, learned about, been involved in, and forensically troubleshooting has come because of one of these 13 root causes. And what you want to ask yourself is which of these 13 root causes are the ones that are the most likely ways that your company's computers and networks could be broken into, or the cloud products that you use. So every single attack, every single malware program begins as one of these 13 types of attacks. The biggest two for most companies is social engineering and unpatched software. Social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all successful data breaches. And let me say, and has been since the beginning of network computers. It's not anything new. It's been that way for 3 decades. Unpatched software has been involved in about 20 to 40% of successful attacks over the years. These days, Mandiant at least says that unpatched software is involved in about 33% of attacks. So social engineering is by far the number one way that most organizations are compromised, even with cloud computing. Unpatched software is number 2. And you need to really focus on those 2 things. And we'll cover some other things today, but those 2 are certainly the largest risk in most organizations and the largest risk in most cloud implementations. So anything that you can do to prevent that from happening, which includes your technical defenses and also training. So, preventing people from being socially engineered, telling them that they have to patch and that sort of stuff. Anything you do to prevent those things is a good thing to do. So let's go into the top cloud security threats that are out there. And I will say before we start that real quick, there were a lot of cloud-specific threats that a lot of us worried about for a long, long time. I've been in cloud security longer than the clouds have even been called clouds. But there were all these specific issues, like we were worried that an attacker would break into one tenant. Clouds are multi-tenant services with a bunch of different customers, and we're always worried that hackers would break into one tenant and then be able to see other tenants. And that kind of did happen a little bit, but it really never became anything big. But there have been some attacks that way over the years, but very minor. We were worried that there might be like cloud-based malware, like cloud-based viruses would take over all the tenants in the cloud service all at once. That hasn't happened yet. We were certainly worried about, most clouds are supported with virtual machine software, VMware or otherwise, and we were really worried about client-to-client attacks or host-to-client or client-to-host attacks. Those have occurred in a small way. Ransomware has taken advantage of that in some on-premises environments. But really, again, just virtual machine attacks just haven't become a big thing. We're also, worried about an attacker being able to find someone's deleted files or drive or data bucket and undelete it. There were some early attacks where some researchers were able to find some deleted data and undelete it, but largely that hasn't been a problem. And then there's certainly data ownership issues where, if your data is in the cloud, who owns it? And if the cloud vendor goes away or stops working, can you get your data back? Those are certainly, that's a valid concern, but so far hasn't turned out to be too huge of a problem. So the cloud specific issues that we were really worried about for a long time just really haven't taken off. And it's really been more traditional things that have been the undoing of cloud security. The real issues that are causing the problems aren't as sexy as these cloud issues that we worried about for a long time. And now clouds have been around 10 or 15 years and these things really didn't take off. And so we worry a little bit less about them. But here are the things that we are going to talk about today. Here's the 5 issues. And we're going to start by talking about social engineering. Again, social engineering is involved in about 70 to 90% of all attacks. They're involved in at least 50% of all cloud attacks. And it's certainly something even the Cloud Security Alliance says you should be worried about. Here's a particular screen capture from their last security threat report. But you can see here that they're just saying, like in this particular example, was a Dropbox attack in 2022 that the attackers targeted began with a phishing campaign. Some employees clicked on malicious links and authenticated to a fake website with their GitHub credentials and even their one-time password multi-factor authentication mechanism. And this enabled the attackers privileged access to Dropbox's GitHub repositories where code was and data and that sort of stuff. So that was a really big attack back then. And it was all because of social engineering, just as an example. They also, social engineering is used to steal people's login credentials. You'll hear people like, oh, they got them because they stole the passwords. And a lot of reports will say, their passwords were stolen, and they'll kind of talk about that like that's the attack. No, the real question is that someone's password was stolen. How was it stolen? Was it social engineering, which is the most common way with about 50%? About 50% of the time when password credentials or tokens are stolen, it was because of social engineering. Or is it that they did some password guessing? They didn't steal the password, they guessed successfully at the password. Did somebody have hard-coded credentials? That happens in GitHub all the time, where programmers and developers will accidentally leave hard-coded logon credentials in their code that's publicly accessible. Or was it because an ex-employee had a login name and password someone didn't discontinue? Or did the hackers hack multi-factor authentication? So, again, when you hear about that, someone's password's been stolen or something like that, you have to ask, well, how did it happen? Was it social engineering? Was it unpatched software? Was it misconfiguration? You have to start thinking root causes here. A really common way that social engineering is used is something called this network session hijacking, or Microsoft calls it adversary in the middle. And that's where the hacker usually sends a phishing email to the targeted victim and says something like, the email appears to come from the legitimate cloud product. The victim, potential victim, doesn't know that email's fake. Although if they looked on the link before they clicked on the link, they would probably see that link isn't the valid URL. But with this type of attack, the hacker creates this social engineering email that looks like it's coming from the cloud provider, sends it to the potential victim with a link that they're supposed to click on to log in. And instead of logging into the cloud product, what the victim actually logs into when they click on that rogue URL is what's called a man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website that then connects them to the real cloud service. But there is now, and the man-in-the-middle transparent proxy website will show the victim, it will send everything from the cloud service to the victim, and everything the victim types in or clicks on is sent to the real cloud service. But there is this man-in-the-middle rogue transparent proxy website in the way where the hacker is collecting all that information, which could include login name and password, could be SAML token, could be a password, could be a one-time password code. This is really, really common. This is the vast majority. This is one of the largest way that attackers compromise cloud products, by social engineering the user into clicking on a rogue link, and then the attacker will steal the information the user sends, like login name and password or SAML token, or if they, once the victim logs in successfully to the real website, the website will send back, will also send back its own token in there, what's called access control token cookie. It's just really a cookie, it's just a text file. But the attacker grabs that, disconnects the real user, and then takes over the session. Here's a Microsoft report talking about these adversary in the middle attacks. Talking about how there was a large-scale phishing campaign that used adversary in the middle attacks that stole passwords and hijacked user sign-ons, even if the user had enabled multi-factor authentication. And this particular attack they were talking about had targeted over 10,000 organizations. And again, it's very common that people's credentials get compromised this way. The big Uber data breach, Uber's been breached a couple times in the cloud. The way that they were breached in 2022 is it started with a hacker purchasing stolen credentials belonging to an Uber employee from a dark web marketplace. And your question again should always be, okay, how did that password get compromised? Usually it's social engineering. Probably the second most common reason is some website where they had a shared password got compromised, and so that login name and password is shared across multiple websites, and the attacker is able to compromise one website and go, well, let me go try it over here. But you can see here that they used the stolen credentials to access Uber, and eventually they were able to socially engineer the Uber employee on WhatsApp to get them to approve the push-based multi-factor authentication prompt and took it over. So how do you fight that? Education, let people know about these adversary and middle attacks. If you can, use phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication. Most multi-factor authentication, including push-based authentication, one-time passwords, are easily phishable. If you do have to use passwords, make sure you use long, complex passwords that are different for every website and service. Really, we think you should use a password manager. You should enable account lockout on any cloud sites that you have so people can't just guess in perpetuity. You may want to lock your logons to particular predefined IP addresses. Use digital certs. Digital certificate authentication is very, very popular today for cloud products, and I think everybody should look into that. Or you can use, some sort of, again, phishing-resistant multi-factor authentication device like, FIDO devices, YubiKeys, or something like that. And you should prevent and scan for hard-coded credentials. Make sure it doesn't end up in your developers or programmers' GitHub code. This is really what I recommend for most companies, is that you should use phishing-resistant MFA whenever you can to protect valuable data and systems. You should use a password manager to manage all the passwords after that, so you have really strong, complex passwords that are different for every website and service. And then if users must create passwords, they really should be creating passwords that are 20 characters or longer. Which no one wants to do. That's why you should use MFA and password managers instead. Another really common cloud security problem is overly permissive permissions. Very, very common, where someone will accidentally give everyone full control or public full control to like an Amazon data bucket or something like that. Whatever it is, this misconfiguration allows too many people that haven't that have no authentication to access non-public data, almost always due to human error. Some of the biggest cloud compromises have been because of these overly permissive permissions. Here was one back in 2023 where the U.S. Department exposed internal U.S. military emails that have been open on the internet for the past 2 weeks. The exposed server was hosted on Microsoft's Azure government cloud. You think this is the security of the security of the security. Instead, this email server was accessible to anyone with public internet access, and you just had to know the IP address of the server, and you could download the 3 terabytes of internal military emails. Oops. But it's really, probably the more common scenario is where someone just has overly permissive permissions on their Amazon web service S3 storage bucket. Really, really common that someone misconfigures that. And it used to be, let me say, that the buckets by default had really overly permissive permissions, public permissions. That is no longer the default, but we still see people that are giving overly permissive permissions to their data buckets while they're trying to troubleshoot something, and then they forget to put the permissions back to what they should be. So your defenses, of course, are education, letting people know to do least privilege, and you don't want to do, overly permissive permissions. You should periodically, at least every 6 months to a year, audit and verify the permissions on all your cloud data buckets, and you want to have someone alert you if there's been unauthorized permission changes on your cloud data. You have to have good change and configuration control to be able to do that, so that people, aren't willy-nilly changing your cloud data security permissions. And again, you may if you can, you may want to lock logins to particular IP addresses or digital certificates, require VPNs and that sort of stuff. Or you can wrap your data in an encrypted container so that even if someone that's unauthorized downloads the data is encrypted and they can't get access to it. But this is a very, very common thing, overly permissive permissions. It happens in the real world and on-premises solutions, but happens in cloud products even more. So you definitely want to proactively look for and scan and audit and verify your cloud storage permissions. Unpatched software is still a really big problem. Again, unpatched software, according to Mandiant, last year in 2023, said that unpatched software causes 33% of successful attacks. So a third of your attacks are people not patching. It seems really common that everybody should just know you need to patch your software, but apparently it's a big problem because it's been that way for 3 decades. But patch your software. The LastPass hack, LastPass is a password manager. They've been hacked a couple of times, but at least once last year, one of the attacks were because of unpatched software. In this particular case, an attacker was able to log into a DevOps engineer's home computer, and then because it was unpatched, and then get access to the authentication credentials they needed to further hack LastPass. I always tell people you don't need to patch everything. What you need to patch for sure is anything that's on the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities catalog list. That catalog is a list of all real-world software that's been used by a real-world attacker to attack a real-world target. Last year, there's over 25,000, over 29,000 vulnerabilities were announced in 2023, but only about 2 to 4% of them were ever used by any attacker against any real-world target. And what tells you what software that is? CISA's known exploited vulnerability catalog. If you've got software firmware on that list, you need to get it patched ASAP. Another really common target is application programming interfaces. Application programming interfaces usually, really, they just look like links, like a URL that a person or a computer to, and it's meant to allow things programmatically. You can have programmatic queries and data extractions, that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, APIs are commonly hacked by hackers and abused because they're not really well monitored. Sometimes they're not secured at all. Sometimes they're not monitored at all. Sometimes if maybe your regular website requires multi-factor authentication, the APIs almost never do. And so you need to make sure that if you have any application programming interfaces that you appropriately secure them. Here's an example in 2023, the mobile security T-Mobile attack in 2023 that resulted in the release of 37 million customer records. Was because of an insecure API, and the 2023 Honda API attack allowed an attacker to reset anyone's password that was in the cloud. So APIs, I think At times I've read reports, there's been some out there, like an API was used something like 85% of the time when a company's passwords were stolen or guessed, it was because of their API. And ransomware often gains access through an insecure API. So, make sure you secure your APIs. Inventory your APIs. Some people don't know how many they have. Secure them. There's lots of guides out there, including the Cloud Security Alliance has guides on how to secure your API. There's entire companies, all they do to exist is tell you to secure your APIs. So monitor your APIs, secure them, and alert on anomalous behavior. So what are your defenses overall? Pay attention to the top cloud security hacks according to the Cloud Security Alliance, and of course the 5 that I showed you today. Pay attention to the most likely real-world attacks against your cloud sites and services. Not all things do you need to be worried about, but certainly the ones we've covered today. You want to be worried about social engineering. You want to make sure that you patch your software and your firmware. You want to make sure that you're using phishing-resistant MFA whenever you can to protect valuable data and systems. You want to audit and verify and get rid of overly permissive permissions, and you want to secure your APIs. Anything you do to that end will be the best thing you can do. And because social engineering is still the #1 way that cloud services get successfully attacked, we certainly recommend that you train your users and how to spot phishing, how to mitigate it, and then how to appropriately report it so your IT teams know how to take care of it. You should do simulated phishing of your employees because that is the best education you can give them. And then people that need more training, people that failed the simulated phishing test should get more training. We know that doing security awareness training and simulated phishing is one of the best things you can do. Our average customer comes to us with about 33% of their employees that will answer and respond to any phish. And when they get through with our training and simulated phishing, it drops to about 5%. And that's an average among all companies that come to us. Our best companies are at around 1% or below 1%. So it can really have a huge improvement. With that said, I've run out of time. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at rogerg@knowbefore.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and some other social medias these days. But anyways, thanks for putting up with me, and continue to fight the good fight.
Oh man, Roger, thank you so much, as always, for an incredible and fascinating conversation. Lots of cool takeaways, lots of insight. I see a lot of questions coming in, and I know, I get it. Roger always lights up my brain as well. We are going to keep things moving, but here's what we're going to do. We are going to get responses back to you over a live chat today from the Know Before team, and then also in follow-up. So we will send all of your questions to Know Before to get you some answers over email if we don't get to you in live chat today. So keep those questions coming in. Another great way to get information right away is to click on that shopping list on your screen, your wish list. Are you looking for data sheets? Are you looking for maybe more pricing information? Maybe you want to get that personalized demo. Whatever it is, this is the way to let Know Before know. This is how I would like you to follow up with me. This is what is going to be important when you're carrying this forward to other members of your team. So make sure you are clicking on that wish list right now and get the follow-up that you are looking for. Now, I actually did just see Jennifer's question coming in, wondering about key uniques and choosing the right vendor. Jennifer, I have a solution for you already, and this goes for all of you out there. There is a white paper in your handouts tab from Know Before. If you click on the Know Before link, and it is the critical considerations when evaluating security awareness training vendors. So this white paper is going to walk through those key capabilities that any SAT vendor should be providing and what you need to know before you go in to evaluate, and a lot more of those kind of key insights through that whole process, prior to evaluation, during evaluation, and then making that all important decision. So if you are looking at evaluating the security awareness training vendors, there is a great resource for you in the handouts tab. Make sure you get that from Know Before. All right, well, before we move along to our next incredible presenter in our lineup here today, I am going to give away a prize. So we have another 2 prizes. I will remind you that you do need to be here live and present at the summit with us today. But where else would you want to be, right? This is the place to be today. All right, so today we have a gift card, a $300 Amazon gift card going to Ann Phuket from Michigan. Ann Phuket from Michigan. And then we have a set of AirPods going to Jamil Ahmed from Michigan. Jamil Ahmed from Michigan. Okay, well, congratulations to you, Ann, and to Jamil. We will follow up with both of you about your prizes after we wrap. Don't forget, there is still that $50 best question gift card from each one of our sessions. Plus, we also have lots more prizes in store. So stay tuned, get those winning vibes rolling because there are more chances to win. All right, well, speaking of winning vibes, let's say we move on over to the Zerto team. We are going to be chatting next with David Paquette, Product Marketing Manager at Zerto, a Hewlett-Packard enterprise company. Now, David is a returning figure here on the summit as well, so I know that you guys are all excited to hear from him. I am going to step back and hand things over. David, I'll see you for some Q&A at the end. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Paquette. I am a product marketing manager with Zerto. We're a Hewlett-Packard enterprise company, and I'm really happy to be here today. I want to talk to you today about cloud migration and cyber resilience with Zerto. So when we talk to our customers about migrations, they are typically migrating, well, they're migrating for a number of different reasons, one of which may just be the, sort of like the classic moving to the cloud strategy, and that is, fairly straightforward. It depends on what cloud you're moving to, of course. It depends on the difference between your on-premises infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure as a service that you're moving to. But those are fairly straightforward. People have been doing those for a long time. Still, there are complications in terms of some complexities of applications, but that's a fairly straightforward use case. We also see mergers and acquisitions where a company acquires another company. They're on different cloud platforms, different on-premises platforms, and they want to consolidate those. Of course, there's the classic on-premises hardware and infrastructure refresh migrations that have to occur. And then we also see this use case now of proactive migrations, and these fall into the category of where something is going to be happening with a particular site. It could be something like you see a hurricane coming into your area, and you want to proactively migrate critical workloads off of that infrastructure onto a remote infrastructure or a cloud infrastructure until that time has passed, and then you want to migrate back once the hurricane has passed. So we do see proactive migrations being a rising use case. So when we talk to our customers about migration projects, they often talk to us about the same pain points. The first of which is sort of a combination of the risk of data loss combined with added unplanned downtime. And we see this when they are overrunning the windows that they have allocated to migrate their workloads. They've also experienced a lot of high administrative overhead. So the number of experts that they have to bring in to perform these migrations because of the complexity of the migrations and the manual steps that are required that have to be overseen. They also have issues with vendor and hardware lock-in where they have a set of services or applications running on a particular set of hardware or specific vendor solutions that makes it hard to move off of those specific solutions. And finally, one of the biggest pain points is just difficulty in testing the migrations before they actually perform the migration cutover in production. And without the ability to do effective testing, then there are a lot of risks in adding that unplanned downtime that I mentioned before, or the risk of data loss when that actual migration cutover happens. Now, if you're familiar with Zerto, then you know that we have a number of use cases, most of which are often focused on disaster recovery and ransomware resilience. But one of our main use cases as well is our multi-cloud mobility. And all of these use cases are based upon our software architecture of continuous data protection built with orchestration, automation, and analytics. That continuous data protection architecture starts with our near synchronous replication, and this is vital to the migration process. What we're doing is we're moving blocks in real time as they change from the production environment into the destination environment, whether it be in the cloud or on a different site or wherever it is. We are moving those blocks in real time between those sites. So there's no scheduling of snapshots, or there are no agents involved. It's all happening in real time. So we do an initial synchronization of the data to get everything over there, but then from that point on, changes are happening in real time. And there's no impact to production from this because we are doing it at the hypervisor level. It's also hardware and storage agnostic, so it doesn't matter what your storage environment is or what your compute environment is. We are, again, operating at a virtual level, so we are able to move those workloads without any impact to that production environment. One of the key features of the continuous data protection technology that we use is an application-centric approach to the workloads that are being migrated. So what we do is we allow you to group together logically the workloads that you're migrating. Or, if you're using us for protection, we do that in the same way. But they're logically grouped together in such a way that as we are replicating across those blocks of data, we are keeping a consistency between all of the workloads within that logical group. So that when you go to do the migration cutover, where you want to move all of those workloads as a group from site A to site B, or site A to cloud A, or however you want to do it, we're going to have a consistency between all of those workloads in that group to the same point in time when we move them across. Now, as I had mentioned, the orchestration, automation, and analytics being wrapped around that continuous data protection. Where this comes in really is in handling all of those steps that would otherwise be manual steps during that migration process. So with that orchestration of logically grouping together the workloads, the automation kicks in and automatically shuts down the production workloads and brings up the workloads at the target location, automatically converting them between platforms. So for instance, if you are going from an on-premises VMware platform to a AWS EC2 or Amazon EC2 infrastructure as a service, then it will automatically convert all of those for you as a group. So there are very few manual steps that have to happen during that process. And there are analytics involved in all of this so that you can see reports generated from each of these migration cutovers to determine if there were any errors that occurred within those. And you can easily check the success of those migration projects as you're performing them. I mentioned Amazon EC2 as a migration target, and we do support the native hypervisor infrastructure as a service on both Microsoft Azure and on AWS. We also support VMware running on a number of different public clouds, including Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, Oracle, and a number of MSP clouds. We have over 300 different MSP partners that have their own cloud environments that host services for our customers. And these Zerto can be used to migrate workloads between any of those. If you want to go between these different clouds, that of course is possible. You can even migrate back and forth between on-premises and the cloud. So you are not trapped in any destination that you go to with Zerto. We can always migrate back out of those platforms that we can migrate into. Now, as I mentioned earlier, testing is a super important part of any migration process. If you cannot test the migration before you put it into production, then you could have any number of problems when that migration cutover happens. So with Zerto, we give you the ability to perform that test very simply and non-disruptively. What we'll do is we'll allow you to start up the VMs from whatever point in time you choose in the target destination. So whether it's Amazon or Azure or any of these other clouds I mentioned, what we'll do is we'll create an isolated network environment within that cloud environment, and we'll allow you to start up the VMs in that particular group or multiple groups, for a test migration cutover. Now, when you do that, you're able to then go in and manually perform whatever testing you want to validate that everything is as you want it to be within that isolated environment. And you could check to make sure all the dependencies are there, etc. And when that test is complete, we will automatically delete all of those virtual machines from that test environment as well as the test environment itself, and return you back to the normal migration process, which is ongoing, right? We don't have to interrupt the migration process where it's replicating data between the production environment and the target environment to perform this testing. So not only does it not interrupt any production, it also does not interrupt the migration process. So once that test is complete and you validate everything, then you can just go ahead and perform the actual migration cutover at any point in time, because we're always replicating in real time. Now I want to switch gears here a little bit and start talking about cyber recovery and cyber resilience. How does that relate to migrations? Well, we see in a lot of cases that our customers have migrated, or other organizations have migrated their workloads to the cloud, and by virtue of being in the cloud, they think that they have a higher level of protection. But of course, from cyber attacks, that is certainly not the case. Clouds may be more highly available, but when it comes to cyber attacks, that often does not help against a cyber attack because of the insidious nature of those cyber attacks. So these are just some of the challenges that I want to talk about with cyber recovery as I get into talking about building a cyber resilient environment and the ability to recover whether you're in the cloud or on premises. So first, cyber attacks come with unpredictable attack patterns. You can never really predict, what the size of the attack is going to be, what data is going to be affected, how much downtime might be incurred, what services are going to be attacked. It could range anywhere from just some files being encrypted by a ransomware attack to entire sites being taken offline by a combination of, ransomware and possibly a, dedicated denial of service attack. It can be all over the place. Also, the blast radius of attack is something that is very hard to identify at times, where what files were affected by this particular attack, what systems were compromised, what accounts were compromised. It's hard to determine that initially in an attack. And then when you go to recover your data, what point is it safe to recover from? How do you know which recovery points are clean that you can recover from? And then, of course, as with other types of disaster recovery, with data loss and downtime is a big factor in that. How much data are you going to lose, and how long are you going to be down? Are days and weeks, an inevitability in a cyber attack? In some cases, with the size of the attack, that's what we see. Now at Zerto, we look at ransomware resilience in terms of 3 steps: replicate and detect, isolate and lock, and test and recover. And I'm going to talk about all 3 of those. So with replicate and detect, this is where the cyber resilience really comes into play, going beyond just cyber recovery, but being resilient. And with replicate and detect, what we're talking about here is the ability to detect an attack in real time. So as I explained before, we're using real-time replication. That also allows us to detect if an attack is occurring in real time. So we can check every block of data as it's coming across to see if it's encrypted or not, for example. And then based on that encryption, we can see if there's an encryption anomaly occurring, and we can alert you to that. Not only can we alert you to that, but we can flag these checkpoints within the journal that there is suspicious activity occurring. Now, where this real-time detection comes into play is how it differs from other types of detection, typically based on backups. So with backups, they are often performing a scan of the backup after the backup has occurred, and that is going to take between hours and days, depending on when those backups are occurring. With Zerto, you're able to quickly identify when an attack is occurring, which helps you identify the blast radius sooner, It also helps you respond to the event sooner, hopefully isolating it and suppressing that blast radius. So moving on to isolate and lock, the first step in doing an isolate and lock is doing immutability on the data. So Zerto gives you the ability to create a immutable data copy of the data from the journal. So a recovery point that you want to make immutable, we can make a copy of that recovery point from the journal, and we can put that onto Azure Blob Storage, Amazon S3 storage, or other S3 compatible storage, and make that data immutable in that cloud storage, or even on premises if you prefer. And what that's going to do is make that data always available for recovery because it is immutable and untouchable by attackers at that point. Now, sometimes, just having those immutable data copies out there in the cloud is not the fastest recovery scenario available. So we've also introduced the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, which combines that immutability with air gapping, isolation, and a zero trust architecture. So what we've done with the Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault is we've combined both the Zerto software for protecting the data and recovering the data with a resilient infrastructure built on HP Electra Storage, HP ProLiant Compute, and HP Aruba Networking to give you an optimal environment both to protect the data to and to recover within. And as I'm going to show you in another architecture slide here in a moment, it's a fully air-gapped environment. It's isolated. It's immutable and tamper-proof data copies that are based on the Electra storage. And there is the same real-time encryption detection that I just mentioned built into Zerto that is going to alert you early that something is going wrong so that you can take the necessary steps within that isolated environment to begin the recovery process. Now, all of that hardware that I mentioned is production grade infrastructure, and it's going to allow you to have a non-disruptive clean room testing environment within that vault. And let me show you what that looks like. So for the Cyber Resilience Vault, of course, the first part is your production environment, whatever that may be. In this case, it's showing as a vCenter environment, but it really doesn't matter where the data is coming from. The important part is the first part of the vault here, which is an on-premises vCenter environment that is built on that HP ProLiant and HP Electra compute and storage that I mentioned, production grade. So data is moving into that from the production environment, just with our continuous data protection, moving in real time, and it is encrypted as well as has the ability to do the real time encryption detection and alerting. So then you have the vault zone. The vault zone sits next to the landing zone within the on-premises environment, and it has an identical hardware infrastructure. Same HP ProLiant and HP Electra storage. The only difference is that the vault zone is built around HP Aruba networking in an isolated network environment. The only connection between the landing zone and the vault zone is a dedicated storage connection, and it is that Electra storage that is going to make the data immutable. So there is a virtual lock built into that storage technology, which makes that data immutable within the vault zone. And then you have the what we call the resilience automation service, which is managing that dedicated storage connection, which makes that vault zone isolated from any outside attackers. In fact, the only way that it can be managed or accessed is in person within the on-premises data center. Okay, so what this looks like from a recovery standpoint is that you have this Cyber Resilience Vault, which is made up of the landing zone and the vault zone. And the first scenario that you would have for recovering would be if the production zone was compromised in some way. So you've had a cyber attack, your production environment is compromised, and now you need to recover. And in most cases, you're just going to be able to recover directly from the landing zone. The landing zone, probably won't be compromised in most cases. So you can just do a normal recovery where you select the applications and VMs you want to recover from Zerto. You just select the checkpoint that you want to recover from, and then you recover that with you can non-disruptively test the recovery prior to recovering it, and then you recover, all the infected workloads within minutes. So, just a standard recovery from what's a known clean checkpoint back into, either into the landing zone environment or to a different production environment of your choice. Now, the other scenario is where the landing zone has also been compromised because it has not been air-gapped and isolated. So now you have the vault zone where you want to recover from. So what that looks like is you can mount the VMFS within the environment. You can start up vCenter, start up Zerto, and then you can recover from the Zerto journal using a clean checkpoint from that recovered storage. Okay, just about out of time, so I just want to leave you here with a few ways that you can learn more about Zerto. Of course, you can request a live tailored demo, but I would encourage you to try our hands-on labs. There you can test drive Zerto for yourself with an on-demand lab that you can set up pretty much any time. You can, of course, get a free trial. You can also see some of our user reviews that are out there. But in any case, I'll be around to answer your questions following this presentation. So please send your questions in. Thank you.
All right, David, we are going to get to those questions in just a second here. But before we do, I just want to point out to everyone out there that you have that wish list, that shopping list on your screen right now. So click and let Zerto know how they can follow up with you. What is going to be helpful for you when you're trying to repeat all of the exciting and wonderful things that we just heard from David to your colleagues and your coworkers? Are you going to want those case studies? Are you more interested in that personalized demo? Maybe a data sheet or a white paper, whatever it is that would be helpful for you. You click on the screen right now and Zerto will make sure that you get that in follow-up. While you're doing that, David and I are going to get into some Q&A. David, are you ready?
I am ready.
Ready to rock. I knew that you would be. All right, David, let's start out with this question here. A question about the length of time for migration. And I'm going to kind of consolidate a couple other questions that we got because there was a few questions coming in about the migration process in terms of training, of support, if there's any security risks and time. So can I just get you to sort of dig in a little bit on the timeline and details around the migration process?
Right. So the time of the migration process will vary depending on the size of the workload that you're migrating, or if you're migrating a group of workloads together, the overall size of that group of workloads. Of course, it's going to take some time to transfer all of the data from point A to point B. But during that time, Zerto is going to be replicating all of the changes in real time. So once that initial synchronization is complete, we will continue to replicate all of those block level changes in real time. So the point that you want to cut over can be any time you want after that initial synchronization is complete. Now, the actual cutover time will vary a little bit depending on the number of workloads that you're migrating simultaneously. So, for example, if you have a batch of 20 or 30 workloads that you want to migrate at the same time, you may want them to start up in a particular order. So there may be some timing based on that. But otherwise, we're basically at that point just sort of starting up those virtual machines in that target location. And so it's really at that point the boot time of those virtual machines in terms of the migration cutover time. So there's no data to be sent at that point. We're just cutting over to those replicated virtual machines and starting them up.
Okay, so sounds like it's fairly simple, fairly fast, and well supported. You're there and coaching and helping along the way?
Well, yes, and it's also highly automated, so there's very few, if any, manual steps. Basically, you initiate the migration cutover. We're going to take care of shutting down the production VMs at the source location and starting up the VMs at the target location. And bringing everything online for you. So you basically just have to sit back and wait for that process to occur.
and the automation helps really speed it up because there are no pauses for manual intervention.
Yeah, that's really important. We got a couple of questions about the different infrastructure, and are there any cloud providers that Zerto's not going to be an effective solution for?
Well, we support the native infrastructures of service on Azure and AWS.
Okay.
On other cloud providers, what we support is where they are running VMware, and that is most cloud providers. If they're not, if they don't have a VMware solution, if they're using some other native infrastructure as a service, we likely don't support that. But if they do offer VMware, and that is most of our MSP partners, over 300 of which we have, offer VMware in their hosted cloud environments. So it should be pretty easy to find VMware in a cloud environment, but if not, we support the natives on Azure and AWS.
And does the Cyber Resilience Vault have to be on-prem?
That's a great question. Sort of. It doesn't necessarily have to be on your premises. It could be in a hosted sort of environment. But the point of it is that you have it in your data center, and the only way that you can manage it is by manually sort of going over to the console to manage it. So if it was being hosted by a partner, for example, like a managed service provider, they could have access to the manual management of that device. Or, of course, if it's hosted near your location, you could travel there to manage it yourself. But otherwise, it's on-prem specifically so it can be fully air-gapped within that environment to be fully protected.
Well, we got a follow-up question. Do I have to use the HPE hardware in the Cyber Resilience Vault?
Yes, that's a great question. But we do require the HPE hardware, partly because that's how we sell it. We sell it in specific bundles with the HPE hardware. And the other reason is because we're using some of those native capabilities, particularly within the Electra storage, to perform the immutability as well as the replication of the data and the dedicated network connection between the Electra devices, between the landing zone and the vault, in order to provide that air gapping, the isolation, and the immutability within the vault.
All right. Well, now, David, I have one last hardball question for you. This is the toughest question I'm going to ask you all day. We have a raging debate in our audience today about the best way to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Question for you: any hot grilled cheese sandwich tips, and/or do you dunk your grilled cheese sandwich in soup?
That's a great question. My wife loves to use Havarti cheese in her grilled cheese sandwiches, and I've tasted them. They're delicious. I don't know that there's a best way. I've had a number of different ones, but definitely soup is always good with grilled cheese.
All right, David, we appreciate your expert opinions on everything from Zerto through to grilled cheese and good Havarti tip. Bill says, "Ooh, nice and gooey." Yes, I like that. All right. Well, David, if anyone wants to jump in and get started learning a little bit more about Zerto and picking your brain on future grilled cheese sandwich tips, how would you recommend that they get started?
With Zerto, they could get started with our website, particularly those hands-on labs that I mentioned. Those are excellent, an excellent way to get yourself familiar with Zerto. If you don't want to go in that deep right away, there's certainly plenty of content and videos that are available to look at regarding everything from migration to cyber resilience. So we have a lot of great information there. And of course, if you want third-party opinions, we have a lot of great user review sites that you can look at where you can hear stories about how others have been successful with Zerto.
Well, I really appreciate that, David. I wish we could keep going. We're going to have to leave it there, but we'll bring you back again soon to chat a little bit more. Thank you so much for being with us here on the summit today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and to everyone out there who is still clicking on that Zerto poll, that wish list, that shopping list, keep that up. Keep those requests coming in. Let Zerto know how they can follow up with you. I also want to remind you to visit the handouts tab. If you have not already done so, make sure you get that Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault. Too much grilled cheese on the brain. Zerto Cyber Resilience Vault, and you can explore that advantage that you're going to get with Zerto. It's a fantastic follow-up. This handout is easy to read. It's quick. And it's going to be a great way to remind yourself of all the things that we just heard from David. So make sure you've got that downloaded. Hold on to that. Save that for after we wrap. Now, I'm going to move along, but before I do, I have to point out that Mike has just said that applesauce is the best dipping for grilled cheese, which is sort of mind blow for me. I had never thought about that, Mike. That is an absolute game changer, but I do like a good sharp cheddar cheese on an apple, so I see it. I'm just not sold. Somebody try this and report back to me on the next summit, because I need to know about the grilled cheese sandwich dipped in applesauce. The important things we're solving today on the summit. Speaking of important things, let me do a prize giveaway before we move along here. So we have up next a $300 Amazon gift card for you all, as well as a Nintendo Switch. So our $300 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present at the webinar is Thomas Blau of California. Thomas Blau of California. And our very first Nintendo Switch giveaway of the summit is going to Joseph Whitted from Michigan. Joseph Whitted from Michigan. Congratulations to you both. We will follow up with you after we wrap, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget, we have that $50 best question gift card coming at you, plus lots more chances to win in the summit, so stay tuned. All right, well, we are going to keep things rolling right along in this day of fun and excitement. And up next, we have, of course, the Pure Storage crew. And today we get to chat with Alan Hurt, technical evangelist at Pure Storage. Now, I am very excited to get into this. I can't wait to hear a little more about what's going on at Pure Storage. So I am going to step back and hand things on over to you. Take it away, Alan.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Change Your Mindset for Storage Success on Premises, Hybrid, and Cloud. My name is Alan Hurt, and I'm a technical evangelist here at Pure Storage. Before coming to Pure, I own my own consultant company, and I worked for other consultant companies for over 20 years. I'm known for doing infrastructure stuff, including storage. I'm a VMware vExpert, dual Microsoft MVP, so I can talk the tech as well as talk the business side of things, which is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started. So let's talk about some of the challenges associated with storage. Now, whether it's people I've talked to here in my capacity at Pure or in my previous life working with customers for a long time, there are two things that go hand in hand with storage. It's capacity and performance first and foremost. So whether you're, C-level or manager or you're an administrator, everyone knows that you need the amount of storage space or the capacity to have what you need in your environment, whether that's databases, whether that's files, could be other things. Point is, you need to make sure that that's there. At the same time, that storage serving up those files and databases need to perform well. You need to have the right number of IOPS to meet your environment. And let's think about the evolution of storage. Over time, we went from dedicated units to where storage is a shared resource in most companies. Factor into the difficulty now with the cloud of you're gated with your performance and potentially your capacity by the size if you're doing traditional virtual machines or infrastructure as a service known as IaaS in the cloud. That VM you buy very much gates your performance capacity. So we're in a slightly different world today if you're going in the cloud space or you're in hybrid where you got to worry about some of that, but also the on-premises stuff. So, but that will always be true no matter where your stuff is living, right? But at the same time, we have other issues, right? Because if you're a technologist, you're not necessarily worried about how much some of this stuff costs. Well, somebody somewhere is responsible for that. So, but cost of ownership is more than just a financial commitment. There is a technical side of that, because somebody's got to maintain these, which means you're paying your technical staff. There's a time involved in that, so that factors into cost of ownership and the resources. There is also obviously the financial consideration of just paying for these things, right? Historically, on premises, you're paying for your storage outright and it depreciates over time. Up in a cloud-based model, you're getting the capacity based on size and IOPS generally. And sometimes you have to buy a bigger disk to get, say, the IOPS you need, even if you don't need the capacity. So there are financial considerations there. So you're spending more to meet your technical requirements. Now, the other thing we need to think about here that I've seen historically in environments is that over time, there are certain disruptions that can happen. Now, change, again, we've gone from on-premises physical going to virtual, taking what we used to spec out to do on traditional arrays and making them virtual disks. What about hybrid? What about cloud? So where you store your stuff, as I've sort of talked about already, can be disruptive because you got to change how you think. Any kind of patching and upgrading. So, specifically when we're talking about storage, we're talking about upgrading things like firmware. But even honestly, if you're just updating your servers and you're updating drivers for, let's say, your HBA cards, does that require a reboot? At some point, your storage is going to go out of support, or you're going to run out of capacity, whatever it is. You got to think about that, because whether it's 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, maybe it's not performing to the level you need because you've taken on additional workloads. And that's that bottom bullet point there. That's that new use cases. Let's think about AI. So it doesn't matter when you're watching this, whether you're watching this live or, down the road. AI was not a use case that we thought about 10 or 15 years ago. Things were different. Now that AI is kind of a very huge use case that may need a lot of IOPS, for example, your storage might not have been spec'd out for that. So how do you deal with that? Nobody has a crystal ball. As a consultant, I did the best I could with my customers to make sure that they were set up for success. But here's the reality, and something I try to get all my customers to think about was the second you go into production, at some point, whatever you've put in, be it a server, be it storage, it's going to be obsolete at some point. So you need to think about when that needs to be replaced or upgraded, updated, and, approach that. So what does that mean? A couple things. First of all, you have to change your perspective. And really what that means and how do you achieve this is thinking like consultants or service providers. Now, that was my job from the consultant perspective, but I worked with customers who used managed service providers. So I'm familiar with that world. And if you think about it, the cloud providers like Azure and AWS, they're service providers. They're providing a service for you. So how do you do that and be your own internal consultant in your company or your own service provider if you're an IT department or a storage group? Well, one of the things that I always did with my customers, which was one of the most common tasks, was sitting down and first of all figuring out where they are today, do some baselining and benchmarking so that we can put measures in place to see how they're growing over time, how performance changes over time, how usage changes over time. That helps you predict growth. So when you hit that inflection point that you need to maybe make a change or do some sort of big update or upgrade, that you kind of know where you've come from and you can come with data and information, right? You need to understand the business needs, the business requirements, because we don't just do technology for technology's sake. Nobody's buying storage arrays just because they're cool. Now, at Pure, we'd love that, but let's be real here. You're running workloads that end users are using that they need to get jobs done, right? But sometimes you need to be more agile. Taking months or years to deploy a solution sometimes doesn't work. You need to get something out the door quickly. So being able to be more agile and get things done quicker is important. Making sure that you have documented service level agreements for things like performance and availability, because what that simply put at its bottom line is, whether you're an administrator or you're a C-level, you need to know what your success is going to be measured against. So if you have, for example, an availability outage, the admins need to know what the system, first of all, should be designed for long before you have that outage. But secondly, what the business agreed to in terms of what the outage could be before, things really go south, right? Obviously, security is a consideration in any design today, in anything that we do. Cost, we're going to talk a lot about cost over the next little bit, but financial, somebody's paying for this stuff, right? And as I already mentioned, the operating models have changed. If you're doing on-premises, are you doing direct to storage? Are you using virtual disks if it's a virtual machine? Or is a VM going direct to storage through something like iSCSI or pass through fiber channel, let's say in Hyper-V? Is it vVols and VMware? Are you up in the cloud where you're using, let's say premium disk or ultra disk in Azure, or, the equivalent in AWS? And another thing that we also don't think about, because this speaks to capacity, but it's a bunch of other things, is compliance. So how long do you need to retain data? Because you may need nearline retention for things like backups to make sure you can recover quickly. But what about a yearly backup for financial regulatory compliance or healthcare compliance? Does that need to be hot? Does it need to be cold? Can it be stored in the cloud? Does it need to be on premises? Does it need to be in a vault? All these questions that you need to sort of think about of planning for, of being your own consultants, right? And the flip side of that, from just generally a technical perspective, is the way to success is to automate as much as you can, get into a more DevOps mentality where, things are more process-based. You're doing a lot of GUI stuff, right? Because reduce your administrative overhead and things are just easy and just work for repetitive tasks, the better things will be. So what does Pure have to help you? We have a few things. First of all, let's just talk in general. We've got different kinds of arrays. We've got FlashArray. We've got FlashBlade. We've got storage that you can run up in a cloud provider with Cloud Block Store. So you can then take your on-premises investments and also extend that up to the cloud. We've also got Portworx. Pure Run, helps in the overall story. And then we've got Evergreen, which I'm going to focus on here for a little bit. But take all that together, and we've got some great offerings that can help you out from a storage perspective. So again, sort of taking a half step back to some of the stuff I've talked about. We obviously have the technical part of storage. Your provisioning storage to a server, or provisioning storage for files or a file share. It's got capacity, it's got performance needs, whatever you've got. You've got AI that needs to process quick, so you need quick storage to serve up that, right? We can do that from at Pure, but somebody's got to buy that storage, right? So, but then how do you buy it? Do you buy it outright? Do you want to lease it? Do you want to pay over time? Do you want something different because you don't want to spend whatever it costs to get the array up front, right? So, Evergreen helps you solve that problem. First of all, it helps with the disruptions with the way storage changes, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But it also helps you align the cost factor, the cost requirement, with your storage requirements, so that over time you can evolve and you can not only pay in the way that you want or acquire the storage the way you want, but you can also meet your technical requirements, and everything just sort of is aligned. So let's talk about Evergreen for a second. So if you're buying your hardware outright, basically the traditional model of buying storage, you're essentially going to have Evergreen forever, right? Now, on the left, the first three things are very closely related. Now, what does that mean? So, over time, one of the nice things about the pure arrays, if it just let's go traditional here, right? Every n number of years, you got to a point in your environment, whether it's your current job, previous jobs, whatever, that you needed to buy new storage. Whether you ran out of capacity, it wasn't meeting your performance needs, it was obsolete, insert, anything here. But imagine if your storage itself was fine, the storage itself was fast enough, but you wanted to upgrade the controller, because you wanted to maybe take advantage of a new technology or something like that, but the capacity you have is just fine. You don't necessarily change out the disks or rip things out of your racks. Well, that's the one nice thing about the pure arrays, is that you can over time upgrade your hardware, which lowers your overall total cost of ownership, or TCO. And, if you're not having to physically move the stuff that was on that array to another array, your interruptions, your downtime are going to be minimal to none, right? And that's really important in this world where most people need to be up 24/7, and you want that sort of less to no disruption, and that's really great. And as an availability guy, I can tell you anything customers can do to reduce that is important, and storage is a key component of that. Now, one of the challenging things of storage is that, as again I mentioned before, planning capacity 3, 5, 6, 7 years in advance is really hard. What if you acquire a company and now need to consolidate and double your storage? The storage you spec'd out doesn't do that, right? So with Evergreen Flex and Evergreen One, you can have a usage-based subscription where you basically just pay for what you need when you need it. And that's really nice. So you're not locked into one, I've got this, and this is all I ever have. And the only way I'm going to have to change that out is to buy a whole new array, which is going to blow all my costs out of the water. So, in essence, what that means is if the internal space is greater than your usage-based subscription, you have room to grow. So, in essence, you're not paying for all that space at once, right? And that gives your people, the people who are needing to worry about the cost of this, a little more flexibility in maybe how this is all paid for and spec'd out, right? But at the same time, with capacity mobility, let's say you have that usage-based subscription and you have different pure things like Cloud Block Store. Well, if you have a certain amount of capacity and you're not using it all in one, say, single array, like a flash array, maybe you apply to Cloud Block Store or another array. Again, giving you that flexibility. Now with Evergreen Run, it takes it a step further where you get some service level agreements. There's a link to a blog post at the end of this presentation, which we'll talk about that. But you're basically getting that cloud-like consumption model, if you will, that paying for model, that storage as a service. Now, I know from experience that some of my customers in the past, when I was doing consulting, had a problem with the cloud-based models in the sense that they didn't do the right planning and the cloud cost a lot more than they thought it would. Well, that isn't, what you're necessarily thinking about here. What you really want is that flexibility. Take out the cost for a second. The nice thing about an OpEx model or storage as a service model is that You want that flexibility to pay for what you're using instead of having to buy everything all at once, which is that traditional, say, evergreen forever model. Both are valid. It just depends on where you're at in your journey. Now, the other thing here is that the one main difference is with Evergreen 1, Pure itself owns the hardware, whereas in the other two, you're basically buying the hardware from a CapEx perspective, but say with Evergreen Flex, you're getting the flexibility of the storage piece. So, in summary, we're in a different world today than we were 5, 10, 15 years ago. And even with people doing things like repatriating workloads, a lot of folks are still hybrid. Not everybody's completely on premises. Some people, as I said, were burned by the cloud, but they liked the idea of the way the financial model worked in the cloud and the flexibility that it brought. So what you're striving to get here is a model in your environment for your storage that balances the technical and the financial. And the way to do that really is to think differently. So with Pure, we have things like Evergreen that change the game. But you also want to think about your storage platforms and how they'll grow with you over time and invest in the ones that are going to work for you both technically, financially, and that will meet your capacity and performance needs and not have to buy a whole new array every 3, 4, 5, 6 years. We've got a little bit of time, so let's take some questions. All right, here's our first one. Can you clarify usage-based consumption with Evergreen Flex? Absolutely. So what that really means is that the available capacity of the hardware that you may have from Pure can be greater than what you may have an agreement to use. So for example, if your array has 2 petabytes of storage capacity, but your agreement is for 1, it gives you room to grow, and you could obviously add more capacity and talk to your account manager, your partner, and get that increased. So you're not buying a whole new array to expand your capacity over time. Okay, here's the second question. Can Evergreen Forever or some previous traditional CapEx purchase or from Pure be converted to, say, Evergreen Flex or Evergreen One? Yes, it can. What you need to do in that case is talk to your account manager and your Pure partner and just get that all set up. But you're not stuck at just Evergreen Forever, or something else. You can essentially upgrade, if you will, to Evergreen Flex or Evergreen One. We've got time for one more, so let's take this one. How does Evergreen One differ from a traditional lease? Think about this for a second. Even with an OpEx, some kind of OpEx model, especially on premises, that is usually just the operational cost of the hardware over some set lifetime. And at some point, you're still going to have to replace that. Well, with Evergreen One, as we've talked about, you get that as-a-service OpEx financial model, but the actual array can evolve over a timeline that you choose. You're not locked into a time frame. So I think that's a great advantage to what we have here at Pure. Here's that link to the QR code for more information and a link to that blog. Really quickly, before we wrap up, here's my contact info again. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions. Thank you for attending. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Alan, for that wonderful presentation and for taking some audience questions at the end. I know there were a lot more questions that Alan did not get to. We are going to make sure that you get some responses back from the Pure Storage crew, so keep those questions coming in. Another great way to get the information that you're looking for is to click on your screen right now and let Pure Storage know, are you more interested in white papers or case studies or data sheets or whatever it is, whatever you've got on your mind. If you click on that shopping list, on that wish list right now, then Pure Storage can follow up and get you only and exactly the information that you are looking for. So this is the easy button. Make sure you click it, right? All right, now I'm also going to suggest that you head on over to the handouts tab. Be sure that you click on the Pure Storage link, open that tab. It's going to take you over to the Pure Storage website. This is a great way for you to follow up on everything we just heard from Alan. Plus, you can register for the Pure Storage Pure Accelerate. You can read a little bit more, dig into some of these resources. There's lots of great stuff there, so be sure you've got that tab open. Spend some time hanging out there after we wrap. Ooh, I see a shout out from David saying, love Pure, they're the best. That's awesome. Love that, David. Keep those high fives and shout outs coming out here. Always good to get the high fives from the audience, right? From your community here with us and hearing what, other people's experiences have been. While you guys are clicking on the poll, while you're opening that handout, saving that link, posting your final questions, boy, that's a lot of homework for all of you. How about I will reward you with a prize giveaway. Now, I do want to remind you that you do need to be here live and present at the summit in order to win. And our next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Chris Wam from Ohio, possibly Wams, Chris Wams of Ohio. If your name sounds something like that and you live in Ohio, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. We will follow up with you after we wrap. Luckily, we have your contact information, so you will hear from us, Chris. All right, now we also have a Nintendo Switch going to Jason Bonfili from Pennsylvania. Jason Bonfili of Pennsylvania, you have won a Nintendo Switch. So stay tuned for that. We will follow up with you after we wrap. Plus, we have that best question gift card coming at you from each session. And there is still one more chance to win. So don't give up just yet. More chances to win coming your way. All right, well, that's it for prize giveaways. We've got our questions in. You've got your handouts open, which means it is time to move into our next presentation. And my friends, here is the good news. Here's the bad news. The bad news is this is our very last presentation of the summit. I know, I have no idea how that went by so quickly today. It has been so much fun. The good news is we are absolutely wrapping up on a high note. We have here with us the Rubrik crew. Now, a lot of you will right away recognize this name here. Veer Choksi, Senior Product Marketing Manager, has been with us many times on Summits, Megacast, EcoCast. So you know that we are definitely going to get some good information. Veer always has cool insights, and I'm sure there's many ahead. So Veer, I know you're waiting in the wings. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand things right on over to you. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Veer Choksi. I'm with Rubrik, and I've been here for about 2 years. Now, my goal here is to explain how you can use your own data to improve your cyber defense, and also to introduce data threat analytics, which is a set of capabilities that can help you detect threats better so that you can recover from cyber incidents quickly and confidently. And this presentation is geared towards both the IT and the security audience. Now, we all know that the cyber threat landscape has become challenging over the past few years. There's many reasons for this. The attack surface has grown a lot. Users are more distributed, and we have much more complex hybrid environments than in the past. It's also easy to become a cyber criminal, especially with ransomware as a service providers. So the barrier for entry for becoming a cyber criminal is a lot lower than it used to be. And also cybercrime remains financially rewarding. Now, before getting into my main content, I want to set the stage with some research from Rubrik Zero Labs, which is our threat research unit. We commission market research, we use third-party information, and also telemetry from Rubrik customers. 99% of IT and security leaders were made aware of at least one attack in 2022. Now, it isn't always ransomware necessarily. It could be data deletion, whether by a malicious actor or an insider, or even accidental. And it could be politically motivated rather than financially motivated. But The bottom line is that cyber incidents are denial of data attacks. And when your data is down, your business is down. And on average, leaders dealt with attacks 52 times in 2022. So that's roughly once per week. Now, 93% of organizations reported malicious actors attempting to impact their data backups. Backups are often your last line of defense, and if your backups are not available and clean, the victim is much more likely to decide to pay a ransom to the cyber criminals. Now, about 73% of those efforts were at least partially successful. And so backups are something that both IT and security teams have an interest in. Now, out of over 27 million analyzed snapshots, about 21,000 of those contained anomalous activity. That's about 0.07% of the total. About 1,200 encountered an encryption event, and that's 0.004% of total. Now, notably, 100% of encryption events were previously identified as anomalous, and 100% of encryption events were tied to a lack of multi-factor authentication. Now, the number of impacted files could range from thousands to the millions, and nearly 3/4 of observed encryption events affected virtualization infrastructure. Now, traditionally, cybersecurity has focused on infrastructure security around prevention and detection in your production systems. But despite significant investments in infrastructure security and prevention tools, the risk of breaches can only be reduced. They can't be completely eliminated. Attackers are still penetrating these defenses. And so just as important as reducing the likelihood of a successful attack is reducing the impact of an attack. How quickly can business as usual be restored if an attack were to happen? And how can you, as a potential victim, make informed decisions to enable a successful recovery? Now, in spite of the security tools that are in place, there are still blind spots that can make recovery painful and drawn out. So malware might be lurking in your infrastructure. Endpoint detection and response tools can detect threats on devices, but they typically won't alert you to threats that are present on servers because they usually aren't deployed there. Second, it's difficult to accurately assess the blast radius of an attack, which could leave you in the dark on what exactly you need to recover. And third, it's not easy to determine when a threat entered your environment, and this could lead to reinfection and prolonged recovery. So all of these blind spots can increase overall cyber risk and increase downtime. So what if you could leverage your existing backup data to investigate threats and recover with greater speed and confidence? Everybody has backups already, right? So the main thrust of this presentation is that your own backup data can be a rich source of intelligence to improve your overall cyber resilience. Now, I'm sure that most folks have seen the federal government's cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And they're actually thinking of adding another phase, govern, but for now, these are the 5 phases. So let's focus in on the detect piece. Teams are asking questions like, can we determine the cause and blast radius? Can we minimize data loss? Can we determine the first point of infection? How can we easily conduct indicator of compromise or IOC sweeps without impacting production workloads? And how confident are we that an attacker is not present in our environment? Those sorts of questions can be addressed with data threat analytics. Now, data threat analytics refers to the ability to continuously monitor your data for risks and detect cyber threats. So the basic theory here is that if you're taking regular backup snapshots, you're in a good position to recruit your own data in the fight against ransomware and other cyber incidents. And that's because you're capturing the longitudinal time series history of data if you're protecting your data with Rubrik. Now, additionally, Rubrik manages metadata, including the content, users, and access privileges, which can help to shed light on your data security posture. Now, data security posture is a topic for another day. But By scanning hundreds of snapshots, Rubrik's data threat analytics engine generates signals that are fed into a highly trained machine learning model, building a historical baseline against which new data can be compared to find anomalous modifications, deletions, and encryptions. Again, we're capturing time series data from enterprise, cloud, and SaaS, feeding that data into the data threat engine, and that can result in really valuable security intelligence, shining a light on those blind spots so that you can make informed recovery decisions, and even automated remediation recommendations. So what can you do with data threat analytics? You can detect threats early by automatically identifying indicators of compromise within backups using an up-to-date feed of threat intelligence. You can determine the scope of ransomware attacks using machine learning to detect deletions, modifications, and encryptions. And you can prevent malware reinfection by analyzing the time series history of snapshots for IOCs to identify the initial point, scale, and time of infection. And because the scanning is done on backups, there's no impact to your production systems. Now let's take a look at each of these three services, starting with threat monitoring. So how this one works is that threat intelligence is fed into the Rubrik threat feed. The hashes and Yara rules themselves can come from different contributors. One of the contributors is Rubrik's own InfoSec team, so you can leverage the same intel that we're protecting Rubrik the business with. Intelligence can also come from Zero Labs, which is Rubrik's own threat research team, or it may come from third parties. Either way, we vet the threat intelligence prior to including it in the feed to ensure the quality of the intelligence is high and the threats are relevant to critical infrastructure environments. This intelligence gets downloaded at set time intervals. And when there's new intelligence available, a hunt will kick off automatically and search for threats based off the hashes and Yara rules. Now, should a match occur, you'll be notified right away via email. You can then drill down via the dashboard to see where the threat was located, what hash or Yara rule was matched, and find attributes associated with the hash or Yara for more background information to assist in potentially kicking off other threat hunts via Rubrik's threat hunting service or via third-party tools like a SIEM or an EDR. You can also quarantine the threat from within threat monitoring as well. So essentially, threat monitoring is a turnkey solution to help detect and protect your organization from threats. The intelligence gets downloaded automatically. Hunts based off of this intelligence will be automatic. And if any threats are found, you get notified about the threat, and any attributes associated with that threat will also be shared whenever possible. So it really is that simple. This is literally set it and forget it. The next service under the data threat analytics umbrella is anomaly detection. Now, anomaly detection provides a comprehensive approach to ransomware remediation. We use multi-stage machine learning to detect anomalies in your backup data. Those stages include observing file creations, deletions, and modifications, and comparing it to historical changes within that specific workload. In addition, entropy is analyzed to determine if ransomware-like encryption has occurred. And finally, if possible, we will identify the specific strain of ransomware as well. So if an attack has occurred, Rubrik automates the assessment of the blast radius to quickly understand what applications and files were impacted and when. And that eliminates the intensive manual labor that's usually required, such as bringing up a VM copy and manually comparing and scrubbing for changes. Finally, your backup file system has immutability. Since your data is never available in read-write mode, it can't be changed or overwritten. Fast and flexible recovery options can be used to revert back to the most recent clean version, whether using instant recovery, live mount, file level recovery, or orchestrated recovery. And that brings us to threat hunting. Threat hunting is a really powerful tool that lets you perform custom scans of your backups on demand for specific IOCs. You can identify the point of malware entry so that you can know what point in time to recover to avoid reinfection and minimize data loss. Threat hunting is both broad and deep. It It allows you to scan multiple workloads and across time. It's also flexible. It can consume and search for threats via Yara rules, file hashes, and file patterns. These types of threat intelligence are industry standards. Thus, this allows you to leverage threat intelligence from various sources, such as internal sources, like your own InfoSec team, third-party intelligence services that could be paid or open source, from industry groups such as ISACs, and even government agencies that publish threat bulletins. And much like anomaly detection, threat hunts are done on backups, and thus there's no impact on your live production systems. Threat actors are unaware of ongoing hunts. And lastly, since Rubrik backups are immutable, you can identify IOCs that attackers have erased from production systems to cover their tracks. So in sum, threat hunting can shortcut the hunt for the point in time and the place where an adversary may have gained access to your infrastructure, and help to define the clean recovery point so that you're not recovering with the malware still in place. So let's look at a typical ransomware attack and how data threat analytics fits in. Bad actors will establish initial access, followed by a lateral move, persistence, privilege escalation, recon, collecting, and staging. And finally, there is exfiltration and encryption. So anomaly detection pinpoints the impact on the target. So you can identify the blast radius so you know exactly what to recover and recover quickly. And threat monitoring and threat hunting identify when the attackers established access so that you can ensure a safe restore point. Now, threat monitoring is a passive activity, while threat hunting is more active if there are specific IOCs that you want to hunt for. Now, these are all very powerful when used in conjunction and help you to make sure that your recovery is as fast and safe as possible. So again, to recap, data threat analytics combines three really powerful threat detection engines. With threat monitoring, you can continuously scan for known threats to detect compromise before the damage is done. With anomaly detection, you can detect file system anomalies to identify data destruction and the blast radius of an attack. And with threat hunting, incident responders can hunt for indicators of compromise throughout the time series of data. So today we focused on data threat analytics, and this is part of a larger data security platform that we offer that includes data protection, data security posture, and cyber recovery as well. With all of these components, you can keep your data safe and make it easy to recover from cyber incidents. I did also want to mention that being cyber resilient is about more than just having the right technology in place. Rubrik also offers a ransomware recovery warranty that guarantees that your data will be available for recovery in case of an incident. We will pay out up to $10 million in recovery-related expenses if that is not the case. And so far, we've never had to pay out. Included with Rubrik support at no extra cost is our ransomware response team, which is a team of experts that's there to guide you during the high-stress moments after a cyber incident. They've performed many successful recoveries. And like I've mentioned, Rubrik Zero Labs is our research group that delivers vendor-agnostic insights on reducing data security risks. And I encourage everyone to check out the latest report from Rubrik Zero Labs. So the question we should all ask ourselves is, can we afford to wait during downtime? And how much is that going to cost in both financial and non-financial terms, such as the reputational damage that a cyber incident can cause? And so a quick example, Lang's Building Supplies is a Rubrik customer that was able to fend off a ransomware attack with hardly any interruption to business as usual. They ended up with, without having to pay any ransom, had zero data loss because they had Rubrik's data security solution in place. Now that's cyber resilience. So thank you all for tuning into this webinar. I hope you found it helpful. And in closing, really briefly, the most important asset for an organization is your data. And you can have really great cybersecurity controls at the application, network, endpoint, etc. levels. But if an attacker does manage to get in and deny you access to your data, are you going to be able to recover within an acceptable time frame? Do you know exactly what was impacted? Can you be confident that your environment is free from known threats? Do you know what exact point in time you need to recover to minimize data loss and avoid reinfection? In today's day and age, you need to have good answers to all of those questions, and that's where data threat analytics applied to your existing backup data can really help. So thank you all again for your interest, and if you'd like to learn more, please get in touch.
Well, Veer, I think there are a lot of people who would like to learn more. We got a lot of great questions, and you've certainly given us a ton of great insight and cool takeaways. Speaking of cool takeaways, if somebody is looking to learn a little bit more right away, that best next step is to click on the screen in front of you. Let Rubrik know how they can follow up with you. You know, are you more interested in, and I've given you all the examples. We've got the data sheets, the white papers, the case studies, but think about how you're going to take this information to other people within your organization. When you're recalling all of the things that you heard from Veer and you're thinking about whether or not Rubrik is the right solution for you, and you're making that case to somebody on your team, what is going to be helpful for you to be able to call back, to bring up, to bring forward, and what information do you need? So click on that wish list right now and get that from Rubrik. The other way that you can get some information right now is to ask a question. We are going to make sure that any of the questions that we did not get to with Veer today are answered by the Rubrik team. Now we're nearing the end of our time together, so we might not get you a response over live chat, but we are going to make sure that all of the questions get sent to the Rubrik crew so that they can follow up via email. So keep those questions coming in. I will also suggest that you click on the handouts tab. Again, spend some time exploring the Rubrik website. You can get registered for Forward. You can get some more info on cyber resilience and really get a lot of cool resources and takeaways to, again, follow up on everything that we just heard from Veer here today. So make sure you've got that open. Make sure you spend some time with that website after we close out our summit, which is coming up sooner than I would like. And while you're doing all of that, I will give away our final prize giveaways to three. We have 3 different prizes that we're going to give to 3 lucky winners who are here live and present with us at the summit. Our 3 final winners here today, we've got a $300 Amazon gift card going to Missy Perkins from Minnesota. Missy Perkins of Minnesota, congratulations on your $300 Amazon gift card. And we have 2 MacBook Airs, each one going to Lizette Nadal from Texas, and one going to Jonathan Smith from Georgia. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I just saw Mark. Let's go, Jess. I'm sorry, Mark, I didn't call your name, and Vinay crossing your fingers, and Kevin, I know. I'm seeing all the wonderful high fives coming in from all of you, and I'm with you, and I'm sending those good luck vibes back to you for future summits and future wins. Now, also keep in mind that you are entered to win that best question gift card if you asked a question today, so make sure you're getting any last and final questions in. I will read the entire winners list from our day today. $300 gift card going to Christopher Timms from Michigan, AirPods going to John Polanski from California, gift card going to Ann Phuket from Michigan, and AirPods going to Jamil Ahmed from Michigan, a gift card going to Thomas Blau of California, a Nintendo Switch going to Joseph Whitted from Michigan, a gift card going to Chris Wams from Ohio, and a Nintendo Switch going to Jason Bonfili from Pennsylvania, a gift card going to Missy Perkins from Minnesota, and a MacBook Air going to Lizette Nadal of Texas and Jonathan Smith of Georgia. That is our entire winners list today. And I do want to remind you all, if you are hanging out on the summit, on the megacast, on a future ecocast, on an expert series, and you're thinking to yourself, boy, this seems like fun, I can tell you it is. It's a great time. I love hanging out with all of you. If you would like to come and present, you have a solution that you think the community would benefit from, please do reach out to us at email, connect@actualtechmedia.com. Send us a message and we will get that conversation rolling with you. All right. Well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to, of course, thank all of our speakers here with us today from TierPoint, from KnowBe4, from Zerto, from Pure Storage, and from Rubrik. What an all-star crew we've had with us. Thank you for making this summit possible. But of course,
that means my biggest, my best, my highest of fives, my goldest of stars goes to all of you here with us in the audience for attending, for asking some great questions. I really had an awesome time with all of you, learning a lot today, also exploring some incredible grilled cheese sandwich tips. That was definitely a highlight of my day today. I feel like I need to go make 7 or 8 grilled cheese sandwiches with all kinds of cool fixins and ideas that we got today. I learned about bacon flavored ketchup, which I did not know was a thing. So there's some cool takeaways. It's been an insightful day, I think, for all of us. So I hope that you are ready to not only go make some delicious sandwiches, but also make some exciting changes to your organization, really looking at leveling up your IT infrastructure and your strategic approaches. I hope you've gotten some solutions today that you are just pumped and ready to spend some time exploring, because that is, of course, the best part of these conversations, is taking those action steps that come next. Speaking of cool action steps, sign up if you haven't already done it. We've got an expert series tomorrow, Friday, May 3rd. We're going to be chatting with Alan Liska. You all know and love Alan already. He is an absolute rock star. Please come hang out. I actually get to chat with Alan, so if you want to see me again, come hang out tomorrow. That's Friday, May 3rd at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. We're going to be talking about ransomware series, backup best practices to avoid a ransomware rampage. So come hang out with me. Let's talk about ransomware rampaging. We'll learn from Alan Liska together, and we'll wrap up our weeks in style. All right, well, I hope that I get to see you all again soon. I hope that you have wonderful grilled cheese sandwiches, burgers, salads, whatever is next on your list. Most of all, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks.